Close viewers watching in our last segment may have heard Bernie surrogate Nina Turner call Mayor Bloomberg an oligarch, to which our own Jason Johnson took exception. State Senator Turner from Ohio is still listening in Des Moines because she wanted a moment to respond. Nina?
Senator.
Thank you so very much. You know, it's just ironic to me that somebody would defend the wealthiest people in this country over the working people of this country. We need real campaign finance reform to the extent that a Mayor Bloomberg can totally finance his campaign. He doesn't have to go out to the people. He doesn't have to build a movement. He doesn't have to talk to people. He can buy his way. It is the same attitude that the elites, maybe Jason likes the word elite over oligarch, but it's the same attitude that the elites had in 1930 against FDR. All of them lined up against him, and he said, I welcome your hatred, because he was standing up for the people. And that is the same message that Senator Bernie Sanders has to the everyday people of this nation, that I welcome the hatred of the elites because I am standing up for you. So cry me a river for the wealthy people in this country.
Nina, you work for a candidate who's part of the 1%. I have no problem with criticizing the system. The system that allows Mike Bloomberg to make all the money that he makes, the system that allows him to buy what he wants to buy, the system that allows him to buy himself into the administration and buy himself into the debates is a problem. But to call him an oligarch, I think, is a misnomer in this environment. And again, you're working for somebody who's part of the 1%. Do you call him an oligarch? No, you don't. You say he's a rich guy. Because just because somebody has a tremendous amount of money doesn't mean that they're not necessarily representing the people. And if you want to use the term elite, you can use whatever kind of term that you want to use. But at the end of the day, the enemy of this country, the enemy of the poor, is not just everybody who happens to be rich. It is a capitalistic system that abuses people. And if you want to speak about that, that's fine. But if you want to name call people, that's not going to help Bernie if he becomes a nominee, and he's going to need Mike Bloomberg's money.
I'm not name calling anywhere.
If he's going to need Mike Bloomberg's money down the road.
It's ironic that you're defending somebody that is buying his way through the democracy. Yes, you are.
I know this
you are
works on
defending
Twitter because that's how you guys operate. But when it comes to actual campaign politics, it makes sense to actually describe people for the positions that they have.
Is this about a word? Is this about a word, Jason? Is this about a word?
No, it's not just about a word. It's about the implications of it. And it's about criticizing the system versus criticizing individuals. Like I said, I wouldn't call Bernie Sanders an oligarch, and he happens to be part of the 1%. I would say he's somebody who's wealthy, but who's dedicated himself to trying to uplift people who are poor.
He just got there at the age of 78 years old.
Okay, let me end this. I just want to break, because I do like this debate, because it's a debate, and I like debates. Number two, do you want to change your word from oligarch?
No, I'm not changing. He doesn't tell me what to say and how to change my words. My words stand.
Well, Brian, it's back to you. I think that's the decisive conclusion of this back and forth. Your thoughts?
Can I say something about
Jason
Johnson? Jason Johnson, a frequent guest on my show. I think this is a really important debate, and I'm really glad you didn't let it get boiled down to the use of a word. It is not about a word. Here's the other, and I understand different views about the system. The enemy is the guy in the Oval Office who thinks there were good people on both sides of Charlottesville. Yes. The enemy is a guy in the Oval Office who just got a permission slip to cheat in presidential elections. Yes. The enemy is a guy who called his generals dopes and losers who he didn't want to go into battle with. That is the enemy. And I am nauseous when I see Democrats fight amongst themselves. And I know that Republicans get no say. I've said I'll vote for, if y'all pick an automobile, I will vote for it. But I feel so wary when I see these really, really intense fights around someone trying to help y'all win.
My thing is this. Like I said, I'm an American citizen. I have no particular loyalty to the Democratic Party or any other party like that. But what I do think is this. I do think that if you're trying to build a coalition to get Donald Trump out of office, this sort of cute red meat stuff is fine on Twitter, but it's not how you're actually supposed to be operating a campaign. You can fight Mike Bloomberg on the issues. You can talk about stop and frisk. You can talk about the fact that people who work for Bloomberg had to sign an NDA so they can't talk about things he's done. That is all fair and reasonable. But when you reduce this to name calling instead of policy, you're doing the exact thing that Bernie supporters complain about. It's like just calling him a socialist.
Can I tell you what Republicans would do? A Republican would take Mike's money and say, help me kill Trump.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.